Hello! Welcome to part 2 of this particular thing. This puzzle, yeah. So, we've gone over the logic of these blocks, unlocking and spawning an object in there. We had a little brief overview about what this thing was and what it did. So these control the distance the blocks move, these control the axis that the block moves on, and this little button just moves this. It's a card. So yeah, that's fine. Okay, so how does this setup actually work? Well, it's made up of a bunch of actors. So this first one here is, it's called XYZ Selector Rotator for Puzzle Blocks. Stupidly long name. This one here is called Move Button. And this one here is called Move Block Distance. Those are the actors. These are the actors with collision. So we've got X switch rotator, also got Y and a Z. And then we've got speed 1, speed 2, and speed 3. All of these things are referenced in the level blueprint, which we'll open now. And also in our first person character, my C Guy 35. What a guy. Now, all the other puzzles previously have worked on a line trace mechanic. So, oh, well, weird frame. Okay. I've worked on a line trace where it's if I press F or G, it shoots a line trace and checks a tag and picks something up, destroys it, whatever it is. This doesn't work like that. Because every single time I press F, it destroys the actor. With this node here, every time I shoot a line trace, it either destroys an actor or spawns an actor when I press G. I don't want to do that, okay? I just want to move the thing. So I was like, okay, maybe if I just click. But it didn't really work. I had to do a different keyboard or mouse command for every different object, which was very, 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 very tiresome. So it didn't really work like that. So what I needed to do is basically enable mouse controls, okay? Now how the hell do we enable mouse controls? And what do I actually mean by mouse controls? Mouse controls is when you're playing a game, your mouse moves your camera and it's fixed so that this little crosshair is always in the middle. You can detect where the line trace is shooting, whatever. If I hold shift, I get this little mouse up here, right? So this is in-game. This isn't me showing an example, which is why he's got his little finger out. It's like a little clicking icon. And that enables me to actually do this, yeah? And get things to move. Okay, and then when I let go of shift, I'm back onto the camera and can walk around again. So I'm toggling between these two states. And that was imperative in order to get this to work. That's a little note of when the left mouse didn't work, so let's just get rid of that. Okay, so what I'm doing here is actually looking for that. I'm literally looking for that now. I can't remember where I put it. You'll have to bear with me. I'm going to pause this video and find it. Hang on. Okay, I was unbelievably stupid and forgot to mention something you need to set up in order to get all this to work. So we've got our first person character, we've got our level blueprint, which controls all the logic in the game. What you need to do is you need to set up a player controller and a game mode. So the game mode handles all of the kind of ins and outs of the state of the game, and the player controller here controls the state of my C Guy 35. So if this is a blueprint, this is the thing that controls the settings of the blueprint in a way. So all you need to do to create that is right click, you go blueprint class, same as an actor or anything, you hit a game mode and you make a player controller. So first of all, make a player controller and call it whatever you want, and then make a game mode. And you make sure the game mode has the player controller class as whatever player controller you want to play as. My C Guy 35, I've called it the same thing. Make sure the default pawn is this guy here, my C Guy 35. So that's there, and that's there. And that's it, you just set it up so that this ties your controller to your character. So your game mode basically says, okay, you've got this controller, that's going to be the settings for this guy here. That's all this does. in here. You can just close it after that. In my player controller, I want to say, have an event graph that says when I hold left shift, I want you to show mouse cursor, enable overlap events, enable click events, enable touch events if it's on a phone, and enable touch over events again if it's on a phone. Then I want your input scale, pitch and yaw to be 0. What this is a variable that I set up that controls the camera movement of my first person character, okay? So I want the camera input from the mouse to be 0 on up and down and left and right. And I want the cursor to change to a hand. Now, how you basically change these variables and set them up is you just click here and you go show, type in show mouse cursor. You can either get it or set it. In this case we hit set and we're going to set it to true or false. False, and tick is true. So if I release shift, let's just compile that. It's frozen. Okay. If I release it, it sets it to false. So these are the same variables. So I'm toggling between as long as I'm holding shift. When I release it, I want my yaw and pitch to be what they were when I set up the original character, yeah? Which is -2 and 2. It's -2 because otherwise you end up with inverted controls, which everybody should hate by default. Okay, so figuring this out was imperative to getting it all to work, basically, so that I could click on stuff. If you want to be able to click on stuff like a point and click adventure, you don't really have to do this. You just make this controller and then you just set all of these to true. Which are these? It's the same thing. Yeah? All these mouse interfaces are this. It's fine. And that's it. So this controller basically just, when I play as this character, this is in effect as stated in my game mode, and every time I hold shift, this will fire. That's fine, that enables us to click, which is really important because in your level blueprint, your lovely level blueprint, you can have things that say on click. For example, let's go to the wheel, okay? We click this wheel, we go into our level blueprint, so since we have it highlighted in our level like this, we can then reference it in here. If we type on clicked, add on clicked, okay? It looks generic, but if you've got that selected, when you click this, it'll give you an on clicked, but in brackets it will tell you the actor that is being clicked. So XYZ selector rotator. Crazy long name. I'm going to change that. So okay, when you click this, I want you to add a local transform, rotate on the Z, by a variable I've called rotation amount, which is 90 degrees here. You could just obviously type in like 90, or if you wanted it to spin around half, just 180, whatever it is. But I just made that variable so that it's easier. I don't have to constantly set 90 if I want things to rotate 90. It's a nice even number. And that's it. That's basically how that rotates. That's it. That's the whole thing for that thing rotating. It's just when I'm clicked, rotate. That's it. Exactly the same thing for the move button. Yeah, move block button. So that's this thing here. When I click it, so I could click the base, it doesn't have to be the button. Just as long as I click it. I want you to add a local transform, but not to the touched actor, not to the button itself that I've clicked, right? So that's important. In here, the target that I'm going to move is the thing I've clicked. In here, it's not the thing I've clicked. It is puzzle piece X, puzzle piece Y, or puzzle piece Z. It's a reference. So how to reference that is you click an actor, and then in your level blueprint, if you right click, it gives you the option to create a reference to puzzle piece Z. That's the one I've clicked. If I click another puzzle piece Y here, it will give me create a reference to puzzle piece Y. So if I hit that, I've already got it in here, so there's 2 now, we don't need that, but it gives me Y, X and Z. So I just right click and say, hey, this is the one I'm going to move. Just heads up, that's the target. He goes, okay, that's cool. So when I click the button, I'm going to add a local transform and movement to the targets of these 3 blocks. And remember from the first video, I locked the position in the actor blueprint. So they'll all try and move on Y, Z, and X. But if they lock at, let's say, for example, Y and Z, they will only actually move on X. It will still get fired, it'll still try and move on Y and Z, but I've told it not to in the blueprint of here, in here. You know? Just to remind you there, told it not to. So that's how that basically works. These move amounts are basically whatever I set them to currently, or by default. They're set to 0. And you think, well, why are they actually moving then? Ah, very clever. They move because they're all 0, but I set this variable speed based on this block moving up and down to set the speed, or the distance. So in the first position it's 20, so I get the variable move Z and I times it, or add 20, yeah? So then Z here, it will move it by 20 units. Or it will move it by 80 units or 40 units, whatever I set it as, how many times I've clicked it. So that's basically how that works. I hope that makes absolutely perfect sense. I really do. So that's it. That's how you click on things to tell them to move or move up and down. This little switch here was a little bit more complicated in clicking it because initially I clicked it once, it moved up. Clicked it again, it moved up. Clicked it again, it moved up, and it set the speed. Awesome. Clicked it a 4th and 5th time, and it just kept moving up. I thought, oh god, I'm gonna have to fix that. How do I make it move down again? Well, it's a little bit more complicated, as you can see. But I'm going to go into that now. Excuse me. And you can just kind of pause the video or go back or watch it again. So I hope this is clear. So what I did initially was I just moved it up. So it looked exactly the same as like this. Oops. Looked exactly the same as this, yeah? It was just transform Z. I just typed in like 20 units. And it moved up. It just moved up 20 units, which was fine. But like I just mentioned, it kept moving up, which is an issue. So I thought, okay, what do I need to do? Okay, I need to count how many times I have clicked the thing, yeah? So here we got this variable times clicked, which is set to 0. If the move that. If the actor that I've clicked is that block, that little block that I move, yeah? If I click it, that's true, okay? I want you to add 1 to this variable, which is currently 0, and update the times clicked. Yeah? So I want you to add 0 to 1 and update it, so we got 1. If I click it again, this will fire again, and it'll be, okay, well that was set to 1 last time. I want to add 1, so this becomes 2. Cool. And I'll keep doing that, and it will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. Okay, that's half the battle right there. If I click it, I want you to set the movement amount that that block moves, because that's the target there, see? Whatever I clicked is the target. I want you to move up 20 units, like I said before, on the Z-axis. So that just moves the block up, and it counts how many times I've clicked it. And you go, why is that useful? It's just exactly the same problem you just described. Ah, that's where you go wrong. The condition of this if statement updating this number is based on if the maximum amount of times I can click, which is 2, is equal to or greater, if the times I've clicked it is equal to or greater the amount of max times I'm allowed to click it, which is 2. If it is more than 2 times, this will fire false. It will go, it's more. It won't fire false, it will fire true, okay? It'll go, yes, it is greater. So I will then not update the number by 1 and add 1 to it. I will go down this path. And I will say, right, move the block that you clicked by 20 units, which is fine, because we do that every time we click it. I'm just calling it again, because it's called here when that statement fires false. I still want it to move, but instead of updating this number by 1, I'm setting it back down to 0. And then when you click it again, what will happen is this will be set to 0 and it will add 1 and become 1. and you'll click it again, it will become 2. You'll click it again, this will then fire because it's 3, which is equal to or greater than. It will fire true because it is. 2 and 3 is equal to or greater than 2. And it will say, right, I want you to reset that back to 0 so we can start counting. So it's like an array. It goes 0, 1, 2, reverse. 0, 1, 2, reverse. 0, 1, 2, reverse. So what you're thinking is, okay, we haven't actually set this to minus 20, Scott. Why have you not done that? Well, if I set that to minus 20, it would kind of move up and down, but it will be another variable and another hassle to deal with. So all I'm doing is I'm rotating every time I reset this number, which incidentally is every time it hits this location, because that's how many times it takes to click. It goes 0, 1, 2, swip. 0, 1, 2, ship. I'm rotating this 180 degrees as well. So up becomes down and down becomes up. Which is, I think I mentioned it in the video, but never mind. Which is very, very useful because it means that the block is moving all the way up, it's rotating, and then it's moving, it's technically moving down, but it thinks it's up because it's rotated 180 degrees on the yaw. And then it rotates again at the bottom and moves back actually up. But from its perspective, its little world, it's just moving up and rotating and moving up and rotating. So it's changing direction, which is absolutely lovely. Now, so that's how that moves, that's how that moves, and that's what happens when you click this block. That's how they, button, that's how they move. So how does the speed get calculated? How does the X and Y axis get declared? How does that work? How in the hell does that work? I will show you. Because again, I'm really, really nice like that. It is, once again, you guessed it, event dispatchers, okay? If you want something to happen in your level blueprint, you get an event dispatcher and you make sure that happens. You call it and you reference it. So, give me a sec. So we have some event dispatchers here. We've got zcall and zendcall. Okay, what the hell is that? It's it's basically in here. Inside of my rotator, that wheel that you click. Okay, it's in here. This is where all the event dispatchers live. For working out if I'm going to rotate the blocks on the X, Y, or Z. So let's have a look. Let's have a look. So, again, you guessed it, it's based on collision. So, if this wheel, the dial, this guy here, collides with anything tagged X switch, Y switch, or Z switch, this tag, yeah, which these things are tagged as, I want you to, let's say if it's Z, this will fire true, go down, it will set a variable called Z to true, it will go call Z call, that means I have collided with the Z collider, yeah, and it will fire this thing. That thing is referenced in my level blueprint here, and it will go call, move Z, which we already discussed is set to 0. I want you to add the speed to it, which is whatever this is. So then what will happen is this move Z becomes either 20, 40, or 80, and it will move all of, or try and move all of these at a value of 20 in here, because this is always 0, right? But we've just called this event and added it to whatever the speed is. So we've updated this variable to one of these speed values. And I go, okay, so when you click the button, bump, I'm going to move 0, 0, and whatever value this just got added to, let's say 20, yeah? So I'm just going to move all of these pieces on the Z by 20. But we already locked them, remember? So it's only going to move this one. Moves that one by 20. Okay, cool. When you rotate the wheel again, it doesn't collide with the Z anymore. It collides with the Y or the X. So we do exactly the same. We fire an event. So this if statement would be, in that case, am I colliding with Z switch? No. Okay, I'm going to check this next one. Am I colliding with Y switch? We'll have a yes or no. If it's new, then we'll go, okay, finally, am I colliding with X switch? And I'll go, yeah, you're on X this time. Cool. I will set X to true and I will call xcol, which, as we all know, is exactly the frickin' same as the other variables that we've done. We add it to move X, we add it to speed updates, and it moves all these puzzle pieces on X. Now, the problem with that is Z is still set to 20. All we did was just add it to Z, yeah? We need to reset Z back to 0 so that our axis still doesn't move on the Z. So we've got Z end call. That is based, my friends, on an end overlap. So end is when you exit a collision. It's completely identical to the other one, apart from we set them to false. Yes, which that one should be actually. Made a mistake. And we fire a different event called end call. Yeah? Which is here. If we fire the event end call on Z, so let's just move from Z to X, it would stop firing this and fire this and update Z to 0, its default value. And then it would collide with X, and then X would be whatever the speed is. So we're actually toggling between true and false on any of them. So if you're in the Z, this fires, and then when you move it to the X, this fires and this fires at the same time. Then when you move it to Y, when you move it to the Y position, X becomes 0 and Y becomes whatever the speed is. And that's how that works. It just toggles between all of those things. So we've just covered it. There it all is in a very short 22 minutes of a babbling fool. So that's basically it. I hope all of that made absolutely perfect sense, and if it didn't, I'm really sorry. You can just Facebook me or something, I don't know. Email me, whatever. And that's how you do it. That is exactly how you do it. I should probably cover a video on how to make variables, how to make event dispatches, how to call them, like actually click and drag, things like that, you know, get them in here. Everything like that, but I'll probably cover that maybe in another video that's before all of these videos, just so that you know, because there's a lot of kind of assumptive knowledge in this. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for bearing with me.